So, as you can see, the way I put the agenda up was, the only thing I put on there. And you watch the video, there was a little confusion on that to the residents. If this is the policy as it is now, we have written, and I was all for this until I stood there in the workshop and realized I was wrong. We had written the policy recommendations to say that we could waive the residency. And then I realized, oh, residency is required by an ordinance for all members of all city boards. This is a policy. A policy cannot override an ordinance. So if you're, firm that you think it's better, do we have to not require city residency for the ethics officer? Not for any other members of the board.
It's in over here. Yeah. Under here. No. Yeah.
What's over there? Eddie, is that a closet? Or is that, oh, that's just nothing over here. It was that door over there where you were.
And if we think the policy.
Get on a meeting.
2021 should say as the officer should chair the group and break ties, then residency would be required as long as it's. Yeah, so that's where the two issues kind of overlap, right? But as long as it's just a policy. This was written as very much a hybrid, and I've been told there's no other city board like this, where now they realized in the first year, it's hard to fill the ethics officer. There's a lot of work involved. It needs to be a paid support role. And that's included in your recommendations to update the policy to recognize and to pay. But doing that, paying a consultant or contractor or someone to do this role and have the ability to vote or break ties.
Is the possibility. You have the ethics officer, who is the chair of the entire resident, training support person, that could be a non-resident who does that.
I mean, that would be possible. I would think that would probably be, and I'll tell you, the goal, money wise and staffing wise, is that Maddie or some other administrator in the city manager's office would be doing some of the administrative support things, like running these meetings, sending out, meeting notices, and so that kind of thing. So I think the ethics officer role, which I'm basically filling in as now, is intended to be advice to people who call in and want to know, well, how come this and why that and why can't I do this way? But also investigating.
Perhaps that's why we're not able to fill that position.
I think that's exactly one legitimate view and where this board was going before. And I think honestly, the council and the staff were going that direction too. We realize now we're asking too much of that person. Let's pay them for the work. Now we're at the point of, okay, if you're paying them for the work, is that really too much to ask that they would be breaking ties on an investigation that they conducted, right? So, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I think it's better to break it up. And have it be an administrative support. That way, the non-residency could be, which was the board's intent from last month, the non-residency can be a thing. And I believe a lot of times when people say chair of meetings, they say, well, the chair is the one that runs the meeting, okay? But I think we've all seen already so far, we haven't even started doing cases yet. A lot of it's just a facilitator role. It's like, let's just make sure we get started and make sure everybody knows when it's time to take a vote or, recess to executive session or whatever, so. And the other option, obviously, you guys have a chair, if you wanted a chair, but, that could be added in too. You could just add a provision that says 7 people decide who they want to chair the meeting, run the meeting. That's all. What's that? It clearly reaches that.
You still have to have a provision for breaking time.
Okay, thank you for saying that, because actually in the workshop, we covered that a little bit. Because I do think some of the council members were going down that path of, well, if we take this person off the table, what if somebody's absent and there's 6 people voting and you have a tie? Well, right, 2 people, 3 people could be absent, you know, there's always that, well, someone could be absent. And any day it's either an odd number or an even number, right? I mean, so when it comes down to it, the 3 people. Right? It means it doesn't pass if you don't have a majority. So in a 7-member board, if 4 of you showed up, you'd have quorum. If 3 of you agreed, you know, voted one way and 1 was a negative, that motion would pass 3-1. If it's a 2-2, you've got a tie, and that means the motion fails.
I like that. So we need a tiebreaker.
I was kind of thinking pros and cons, just because it's a way for me to think about it, and I wasn't sure if you'd be ready to, you know, jump in and say, well, council, here's what we think. But that's what they're looking for, is a recommendation from the board. Obviously, we have to explain it. Yeah, easier to fill.
It's kind of like a hung jury.
Would we be able to defer it to the next meeting if we wanted to try to get the input from one of the members that's not present?
Absolutely.
So that's another.
That is, yeah. I mean, just say you had a time where it's snowing out or something and several people couldn't come and yet you got to the point of saying, well, okay, I really would rather have the rest of the group here instead of having them.
Kathy, this is Eddie.
Okay, Ed, we weren't sure if you were on. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Hey, so on that point, I can't recall from the rules. Are proxies possible?
No, I don't think there's any provision for proxy voting. But let me write it down as a question because to look at elsewhere, I know it's not in this policy, but I can look in and talk to the law department and see if there's any other provision somewhere else that applies to all boards or something like that. But I think the idea is, especially with Zoom tech, if you're here or physically not here, you can still be online and you still have a vote, but you can't like email your vote in. You have to be a part of the conversation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I would just, in part. I was just trying to think through, you know, if you were raising the issue of what do you do when people are not there, or how do you get their input? And I guess, I mean, to the extent that you continue to send out things early and that we review, you know, is there a way for me to, you know, call somebody and say, I've read this and this is what I think, so that my input is there, even if I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm able to be here for part of the meeting by Zoom, but I mean, that's not, I mean, you know, that's
No,
not always
and you bring up a
possible.
great example, and that's helpful that you said it that way, because I agree. To me, in this day and age, a functioning group and productive committee or meetings are all about sending it out in advance. You all taking time to read over it in advance, and that way being able to pose questions in advance to help us get ready for those questions, for example, or to be able to say, look, I can't make it, but I just want to say, I think this about this. And that way I could, you know, a call to me like that, because I said, look, well, Karen couldn't make it, but she wanted to make sure that y'all knew that, hey, ask this question, or this is important to me.
And that was what I was going to suggest, because I know there's been several times that a council member couldn't, they were going to vote on something like a planning item or something that was more specific to the
Yes.
district, but he couldn't be there, but he had a chance to review the case and get his questions answered. And then he would just ask the vice mayor or someone to say whether or not he was for or against.
Exactly, and I think Ed and Karen both bring up really good points, is that way your comments get in the record, but it's not like you actually have a proxy vote. It's not going to be counted in the vote, but it's going to be that let everybody else know, oh, Gina looked at that and she's not going to have a problem, or you know, Kelly looked at that, but she really liked the chance to talk about this. It just can't be at that meeting, and then you switch that agenda item to the next meeting so she can be a part of that discussion. Professional courtesy. Well, if you think of anything else, cool. Otherwise, I'm gonna throw the other one out to get your, juices going here. Brainstorming time. The other one is the ordinance of policy. So I presented at the council meeting in December, and then the workshop in January. And both times, one council member said, I really think this should be an ordinance. And maybe one other one said, yeah, me too. And then I'm looking around the room, well, there's 7 of you, and I'm here too, so, move on, okay, because you gotta understand my background. As long as you can count to majority, you can't get caught up, and let yourself get waylaid, you have to move on. So, but I think what they'd like to know is, do you all have any thoughts about ordinance or policy, and do you see pros and cons on that issue?
Well, if there are any changes to an ordinance, if this is an ordinance, it's going to have to be approved by council. Policy, is that something that he doesn't do for this week? That kind of delays things.
Well, I'm with you, but can I say it a little bit different? So it's a council policy that they approve, and the ordinance will be approved by council too, but the difference is, policy is more flexible. Anytime the council wants to make a change in policy, or if you all see a problem, you say council make a change in the policy, it gets scheduled for the agenda and a majority vote and the policy change. Ordinance just has a little more weight. The other thing is, I should say this, it's their own policy. They don't, it's not a law. So if they want to waive, or if you want them to waive, part of the policy, this just doesn't apply here. A majority vote, the council, they can just waive their own policy. And ordinance is law.
Another thing about ordinance too, it might need to be, something that's going to be second. So that's 2 council meetings it's going to take and possibly published.
Tell us how, yes, an ordinance changing takes longer because you have to publish.
First reading,
and first reading.
It's, it falls, this next following meeting falls on, I guess, in check on council meetings, how it is that. It's usually has to be either second meetings on Tuesday or usually the publish after second reading on that.
Okay, so is it published after it's approved?
After it's second reading,
Yeah, so second reading, they vote,
we vote down
and then it's published, so it's not in effect for
until it's.
pretty much a month, for sure. The first reading and second reading often happens 1 week to the next. Plus happens toward the end of the month and about a week. So it can take 30 to 45 days or so just to go through the 3-step process.
Well, you can refer that, it goes to the legal department, I'm working on trying to change the ordinance with my arduous process. And you get to the first two.
And yes, so it would take more time to be an ordinance and to change it and tweak it and update it. And because it's new and we're learning, we just have to realize if we make it an ordinance too soon. And I think I said this in the workshop to them. I can't remember, but, it will take time to convert everything they've done here, this detailed policy that has a lot of procedures in it. You convert it to an ordinance language. That's the law department doing it. They need to know what of all these recommended changes do they want. So, and so they can rewrite it and take a bunch of that procedural stuff out and put those in the procedures document that we started to write. And so that just takes a little time. So my recommendation is that we say just adopt the policy changes as they are, so we can do our work. Because we've got a handful of complaints that are sitting there that we can't really take care of. But you have to adopt the content of the policy anyway, just for your lawyers to be able to change it into it. So this could happen later, and that's fine, we don't care, or we do care, I don't know, but it's, this needs to be done first regardless.
Kathy? Oh, sorry.
With the amendments that we've suggested.
No, and thank you for asking that. On your agenda, I've got, I'm scheduled to present the policy at the council meeting on March 7th. So what I did on January 24th, it was a workshop. So they could not approve it. They were just asking questions and seeking an understanding of all the changes that were recommended. But I'm scheduled to go back on March 7th. They just wanted me to, the reason I didn't go a little bit sooner, like in February, was because they wanted this input on these 2 aspects, the ordinance or policy and the obviously the ethics officer, the route you've gone so far with this meeting is gonna make you go in and make a few more changes to that policy that reflect that the ethics officer would not be the chair. And obviously, if they want to do a change back, but they want to recommend it. The ordinance, though, would not be changed.
Oh.
So it's just more a recommendation in the report. Ed?
Kathy, yeah, quick question. Can you just send her to tell me how, what's the desire or need for an ordinance versus a policy? Or why was that recommended?
Well, I don't know, there was a lot of why discussed, but in both times I've been before the council in December and January, it's been brought up. My guess is that it is a desire to have it be more permanent, to be more, have more weight. Because something, the other policies, let's see, I'm working on non-discrimination ordinance, it's been done as an ordinance. And I think it's just a desire to have it be more weighty, but honestly, I don't think that a reason is per se given, or at least I want to remember.
One reason I asked that question as to whether these have been adopted or not. Do we have the authority to consider a complaint today because the provision about in the absence of the ethics officer, that's no longer part of Not currently.
The red part, yeah. So that is not part of the policy yet, so we do have to go back, and we're still operating under the current 2021 policy, which is the original document. And you're right, it's, for me, it's been this world, and John too, a little bit, it's been this world that, okay, when people call in and want to complain about things, here's the form, here's the policy, but then we work on, here's all the updates we want to make, but we thought we were gonna be able to get those made in February by the council, but instead they wanted more input from us on these two issues. So we do have to abide by the policy as it's written with one caveat, and that is that they approved in December at the council meeting, the ability for me to act as the ethics officer and do the administrative things, but not be the chair and not break votes or break ties. And for John, as the attorney, to do the investigation part, instead of, typically, the policy reads the ethics officer to do the investigation. So we were trying to, and when they hired me, and my organization, they said, we want you to work on these complaints as they have been sitting out there for some time. So they sort of wanted us to do both concurrently, and we're just feeling like some of the investigation is happening now on some of the complaints. And of course, we've got an executive session on today's calendar to review on some of that and deal with that a little bit, but we're not at the point of you making decisions on that. Partly because we need to go to the council on March 7th and get these changes made, so we are clear that we have the authority to make these decisions.
Ultimately, orders of policy in the end, and the one. We do have strong preference of it becoming an ordinance of policy at this point, because we haven't even come to our next stage of the policy. We don't know what kind of trials and tribulations that we're going to in the process to apply it. There could be changes that are needed in the short term, very quickly in this next year that we're serving. And so the word becoming ordinance, fine, but not yet.
Thank you for that. Trying to remember if I thought of anything else. That one takes time. Yes, I know. Oh, right, the thing we also handed under some. So you also have in your packet a one pager, and that is the time to tell you all. There's a current ordinance on the books that's older, that's about ethics for council members. And the council in 2021, when they took up this issue and made this new policy, they knew this was on the books, right? They haven't repealed it. It is an ordinance, but when you look at it, it says some things that they want people, ethics for council members, but it doesn't have what the policy has, which is a process to deal with complaints and any any ramifications of sort of breaking this or violating. So and this may be why Councilman's been saying it should be ordinance, because I think on the plus side, you could clear up the confusion of, like say, for example, someone wants to file an ethics complaint, and they're reading this, well, you can do this, and this. And I've said, sorry, this EAB does not have any authority over this ethics ordinance. So you can tell me they violated this, but I'm gonna tell you, look at the policy, section, statement of policies, section A through P. Tell me it's something on there, because this board was set up only to implement and enforce that policy, not this. So clearly, to me, a reason to make it an ordinance is to go to this ordinance and this policy and make it all one ordinance. So there's no confusion that, well, this is lofty goals, but there's no way to enforce it.
Some other cities do.
Oh, it's in both.
Policy that they go to the planning.
Yeah. So I'm hearing consensus on that. And I think I can explain that to them, that we're not opposed to an ordinance. It would clear up any old ordinance versus new policy, put them all in one document. But don't bog us down with that now, because that literally will take 1 month of time to figure it out versus adopt the policy recommendations we've suggested so that we can, resolve some of these complaints and learn things as we go and maybe make tweaks to it. And then that'll help inform and make it a better ordinance.
For other boards, is it common for them to have an ordinance and then separately a policy for that board?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I think a lot of time, some of them, a lot of them have bylaws. So if we think about a planning commission, a lot of detail, organizational stuff there, right? You have an ordinance that says there shall be a planning commission, and this is what they shall do, A, B, and C. And then their bylaws would say how many, how many get to vote on this and that, and of course, governed by some other laws and court decisions.
We did that with the community corrections board when it was first born. We couldn't violate any of the state statutes, but we could add to it policies and procedures. I think setting forum and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a lot, yes. The ordinances are what would be like setting up a board is often in the ordinance. It might be in Wichita and some policies too, I just don't know that. But certainly the way an ordinance would work is you'd strip out just the substantive policy part of this policy. And that would be your ordinance after you combine it with current ordinance. And then all the stuff that's in this, which is most of it, in my opinion, is procedural. There's even a header that we spent the most on the time on that section called procedures. So that would be the procedures document that is for the board to decide to have to, you don't have to have council every time they do procedure. Yeah. That
I like it.
That would definitely be better.
Like the idea.
Well, thank you for all that. I think that's helping clarify that and bring it over. The other things in your packet, so we put in your packet a copy of the draft ordinance. Now, this is, as you last saw in your last meeting, but it doesn't have all the red and pink ink and yellow ink on it, right? So the idea is in Word, I accepted all those changes so that it's easier to read and follow along. That was just, if, this is the one I reviewed with the council. And this is the one where there's just a few more changes to regarding the ethics officer. And put it on the agenda for the March for the next meeting. The last thing in front of you will kind of get us into the next agenda item. Okay, and that is, what we want to do tonight, because we know that, when you have like a city council, every couple of years you get somebody new on it, and they all sort of get used to over time having executive sessions. But when you're all new at the same time, there's some swarming, I think we have to do here to figure out, how's this supposed to work? So for one, this is the open public meeting. in this room. We have a second room for the executive session. So here shortly, we'll ask somebody to make the motion to go to the executive session. And you can see from the memo, what we intend is every meeting, when we intend to have an executive session, we intend to have the memo like this in front of you. So you can see how long we're thinking it may take. And certainly you have to read the entire thing because it's very prescribed by law. You have to say how long you're going to be in there. Let's talk about time for a minute. It's hard to set the time because you just don't know when the question is going to be, and you have to do it 2 or 3 times before you get good at it. So we're guessing at 25 minutes tonight. If it's not enough and you need more time, what you literally have to do is get up from the meeting room over there and come back here to the open public meeting and say the whole motion over and say, we need 10 more minutes. You know what I mean? You just make it for another 10 minutes. And it's like a second executive session. Maybe it's just a continuation of talking about the same thing you were before, but you can't give yourself more time over there in that room. You have to physically come back here and do it in the open session. If 25 minutes is too long and you get done at say 20 minutes, you've got 5 minutes extra. What do?
Go back and chit chat
Yeah.
with yourself.
You can go to the bathroom, you can get a drink, you can get a library book. You cannot, you can stay in the room for an executive session, but you can't start talking about other stuff. Because the only thing you can talk about in executive session is listed in your motion. And you'll see it's listed as 2 ethics components. Those are the 2 things we're talking about today in the executive session. But if you come back in here, you can, but we're still waiting for that specific time in the motion to actually start the meeting again. So we just sort of have to sit around and wait for that time. So typically, I try to err on the side of less time, forcing us to come back and ask for 10 more minutes, which is kind of a nice stretch of the legs anyway, versus too much time and then we're all sitting around going, that's what we should go home with. The other thing about executive session is we have to make sure that we don't stray from the topic. And so you can see there's the bolded first part and then the unbolded part is saying why. So first is the what and the when. We're talking about 2 ethics complaints and it's for 25 minutes. The unbolded part is saying why, and that's for legal advice. So that is, sometimes you get a little background and then it's like, okay, here's your lawyer telling you what they're advising. This is stuff that is confidential. We don't want to take any conversations outside the executive session room. And then, because obviously there's reasons that we don't want to say, wow, our attorney told us this. Well, no, we really don't want to get that out there. It's privileged information, so to speak. And that is noted there as well. Yes, so in executive session, you're never making decisions in the executive session. All you're doing is hearing information in question and being able to question, well, did you think of it? You know, and it is about the details of the investigation, and you're talking about it in private to protect people's privacy and to hash through details that are background and don't need to get out there. So, but you're not deciding anything. It is information. So when you come back here is when you'll see on your memo there after the dotted line, when you come back in, you would say, somebody says, as we call back to order, let the record show no binding action in this session. That's the basic statement as to, and it reminds us all, oh yeah, if we're ready to make a decision as a board, somebody has to say, okay, I'm ready to make a decision. Like I said, we don't expect any tonight, so it's not on the agenda. If you had something you wanted to come back and decide or talk about in the open session, you would say, well, I want to bring up an off-agenda item. I want to talk about this, let's add it to the agenda. Typically with us, we know the next agenda after the executive session, there'll be an item on there saying discussion on complaints. You know, and that way you're ready to go pick up where you left off the agenda when you recessed, go back to that next agenda item and then restart and say, okay, this is about complaint number 1 and here's the summary. Now, just typically, and we've talked about this a little bit in the procedure, but typically the way we would do that is The ethics officer would draft the report, being the summary of that, the summary of the complaint, and the summary of the investigation and the findings, and essentially drafting that up for you all to look at and look through and edit as you see fit, so when you come back and be ready to make motions, discuss, vote, etc. Any questions about the process for the executive session? I'm sure that we more. Thinking, but you know, it's all tricky, it's all new, because as soon as you guys decide on the case in an open meeting, you know, it's gonna be out there. You know, it's like, how do I do a courtesy notice to someone, the complainant, the person being complained about, that, well, you can't, I mean, you decide you will be public meeting, so it's all coming out there. So what I think is probably gonna work best is if the executive session, like one meeting, where you hear what's the complaint, what's the response, what's the investigation, ask your questions, etc. And then the next, we plan to not make a decision when we come out that night, but we plan the next week. That gives me the chance to write the notes up and make that summary, which is a public, will become a public document as soon as you approve it. So we've kind of thinking, that's why we thought we would review two tonight, get you up to speed on them, and tell John if there's anything else you want his investigation handled, but next month we will be able to talk about in the public and possibly make decisions on one to do it. What am I missing? Anything? One last thing is when we will also be thinking about, you don't know what these complaints are or the response or anything until you hear them for the first time. So once you read what we ask, you know, do you have any conflicts of interest on this? And then you're deciding whether or not you're staying in with that or pull it. I gotta step out because, you know, this is somebody I have a conflict of interest with. So that's just
and responses to? Is that process
the responses.
Yeah.
Yes. We have several complaints that have gone through the stage of the initial review, saying whether or not they meet the basic requirements of the policy. And sometimes we've seen those, well, this doesn't meet, and I've notified those people, say, yeah, you didn't get this notarized, and that's a basic requirement, so I'll get back to them. Some of those have come back to us, and some of them haven't, and yet, I imagine they'll come back. And others then met the requirements, and so they've been distributed for investigation by the attorneys who are helping us. And when you do that, then you also say, okay, person being complained about, here's the
Better.
and then you give your response. So we have some responses.
Hey, Kathy,
Yes, Ed.
this is Ed. Thank you for all that you've done. I apologize to the group and to the team. I need to exit now, but I did want to be in as much as I could. Continue to do the good work you guys are doing. See you when I get back.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed. Good night.
Bye.
Okay.
Ready for the motion?
Yes, sir. That's you.
Well, I move that the Ethics Advisory Board recess into executive session for 25 minutes to receive information and legal advice on 2 ethics complaints pursuant to KSA 75-4319 subsection B2 for legal consultation with the Ethics Board's legal counsel, which would be deemed privileged in an attorney-client relationship for legal advice. The executive session is required to protect the attorney-client privilege and the public interest. The executive session on this matter will begin at 6:37 and end at 7:02.
Yes.
And the Ethics Advisory Board meeting will resume here in the Evergreen classroom.
Oh, we do have a
Is that
second.
reversed?
Karen seconded it. And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are recessed to executive session.